name's Nathan and I'm from Rethink Food. My background is in primary education and I spent 10 years as a head teacher in primary schools across Leeds and Doncaster. In 2014 I joined a new school as head teacher at a large inner city primary school which was in a level of an area of high deprivation. Early in that headship it became clear to me that a lot of children were arriving at school hungry, and hunger was a barrier to learning. After a major incident that happened in school, I went back to my office and I wrote the word hunger on my office wall, and from that point on vowed to remove hunger as a barrier to learning. And I did that in a number of different ways. We thought about it strategically as a school and thought about the amount of public money that's been spent on teachers' wages. But if children arrive at school hungry, they're not engaging in learning effectively. So it was really important to us as a school that we could start to address this issue of hunger. And the more we talked to children, the more we discovered that food insecurity was a real issue within the community. So a number of different things that we did. We bought a toaster for every classroom so that we could offer a universal offer of breakfast to every child, and we built that in as quite a social experience so that we could talk to the children, settle them in and give them this opportunity to have food. Inspired by a visit that I had to school in China in 2012, we created a cafe. The school that I'd visited had this coffee classroom, and it was to teach coffee etiquette to their children and sort of a whole host of different learning opportunities. And I was inspired to create this cafe within my own school so we could use it to teach curriculum skills, but we could also use it as a place to bring the community together through the medium of food. So having developed this space and we were using it to teach lessons, food lessons, maths lessons, social skills, a whole host of activities, we realised that we couldn't justify spending public money on food for our families. So we had to get creative in terms of how we were going to access food. At that point, I connected with an organisation that were rescuing food from supermarkets and making good of this surplus food. So we connected and were able to access food that supermarkets were throwing away. So I bought a market stall for my school just off the internet, and I started to put this food at the school gates on the stall, and over time families would take this food, they would leave a thoughtful donation, and families started to access food, and we brought some of this food into our cafe as well. Now, based on the success of this, I decided to host an awareness day across Leeds and sent an email to all the head teachers saying, if you'd like us to provide your children with breakfast using food that would have otherwise been thrown away, tell us how many children and we'll do it. So a couple of months after sending that email, with the help of community groups, volunteers, we provided 10,000 children with access to a breakfast. And for me, as an educator, probably the most important part wasn't just providing the food, but it was starting to educate children about the issues of hunger, where this food was coming from, and a whole host of different issues to do with food. So the schools that took part in that awareness day were really keen to continue, and the legacy of that work is the programme that is now known as Rethink Food Education. So that work now is developed and is delivered to schools right the way across Leeds and Bradford, and some more local projects in Lincoln, Leicester and London have followed this programme. So schools receive a weekly delivery of surplus food and then access to an education plan. The education plan for us is really important. As Rethink Food, our mission is to educate and empower people to live a food secure life, and the education piece that we've developed is based around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So these are 17 goals set to save the planet by the year 2030. And what we want to do is to really engage children in a positive way. The issues around sort of food insecurity can at times have sort of certain stigmas attached, but we remove all those stigmas by encouraging the children to take this surplus food to save the planet through their actions. So this stealth approach to health has really engaged children and families in a positive way. So we work really effectively with surplus food. During the recent lockdown, we expanded the number of schools that we're able to work with, and we've provided about 400 tonnes of food to schools across Leeds, Bradford, but also to community groups. And during the 6 weeks holidays, we were able to support healthy holiday programs and improve that access to food. But what if one day this level of surplus goes down? Because that's what we'd like to see. We don't want food to be wasted. We don't want to have this increased level of surplus. So we started to think about introducing a growing program into schools. Now, traditionally in schools, growing takes place in the spring term with everything ready to harvest, usually in the 6 weeks holidays, and that creates even more surplus food. But what it creates as well is a disjointed sort of learning experience. One reception teacher explained to me that in September, the children were digging in the garden and they thought they'd found treasure. Well, there were potatoes that had been planted by the children the year before. So we wanted to look at something that was more convenient and could be approached really quickly and brought inside. And working in partnership with an organisation in New York, we discovered these aeroponic growing towers. And this is a soil-free system that can be placed in a classroom or any learning environment. And you can take a seed and 60 days later have edible salad. And with that equipment, with that technology, we created Rethink Food Futures. And we say that children start this journey as a scientist, then they become a farmer, then a chef, but most importantly for us, at the end, they become consumers. And our programs have shown how children create a really positive relationship with this food. We've seen that children have relationship with food brands, but increasingly children don't necessarily have that relationship with food. And this project really connects children with food. And out of all the schools that we've delivered to, there was just one child that when it came to the harvesting refused to try everything. Children get excited, they want to try the food because they've seen it grow, and it's grown rapidly, say from seed to salad in 60 days. And so many learning opportunities linked to that. And we link it into photosynthesis. We can even break it down into looking at the physics around the frequency of light and how that affects the growth. But on a more simple level, we can even link it to Jack and the Beanstalk. And for World Book Day last year, we had children growing their own beanstalks, writing creative stories, thinking about learning opportunities linked to whatever happened to Jack's cow. And that took children down a journey learning about dairy farming and investigating milk production and a whole host of learning activities. But at the end, on World Book Day, when they sat down and shared their stories, they all ate the green beans that they'd grown on their growing towers. So this is an amazing and great way of connecting children with food. So by placing food at the centre of the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 different opportunities, 17 immersive learning programs to engage people and connect people with food in a positive way, but also helping people create pledges, positive actions that can lead us to achieving a fair and more sustainable food system. And that for us is really important. So Rethink Food, our mission, educate and empower people to live food secure lives.